Good morning, Greg here, burning both ends, burning on the front end of May 29th. It's Tuesday, it's 2018, it's 6:37 a.m. Pacific. Just loving this morning. Had a really good time putting together my outline, getting into tools. So last night I posted on my first cut of systemizing my iCore program, and so now this morning I'm going to talk about some tools. But before we get in, let me just touch on some of the other iCore things I've been working on. Right, so my big thing is connecting with as many of these folks as possible between now and us getting to Colorado. Just have some phone calls, and so. Sent out many emails this last couple of days, and so I do have 6 scheduled phone calls with 6 different folks in the program. Excited for that. Should be really cool. And this is this whole leader among equals piece that I spoke about, and you know how can I kind of step out in front and lead the cohort. You know, even though we're all kind of, we're all actually not kind of, we are all on the same level. So we'll see how that works. I'm excited for the connections. I'm excited to meet some like-minded folks, and I'm excited just to kind of get some momentum going into Colorado. So that way, when we get there, we can just crush it. I'm really excited for that training. That's going to be intense, but a lot of work, but really a lot of fun, and that's going to kind of set the tone for the whole program. So speaking of the tone, so let's get into some tools. I'm working on a system and a bunch of processes to wrap around this iCore program, so that way we can really focus on doing the heavy lifting, doing the really important tasks, and not some of the tasky things like where do I put this interview notes, or which folder was that? Was that Google Drive, or was that our other shared, or is it Dropbox, or because those kinds of things, that's how things fall through the cracks. All of a sudden, someone starts breaking out some new tool in the middle of the program, and it kind of confuses people. We might lose some things. There might be some weird internal team shift to that new platform where we are all agreed on this other thing. So it's important, in my opinion, to think this stuff out. And so it's all about tools. And so I've laid the foundation for my iCore system, at least the first cut. Now that's the critical thing. It's only a first cut. I totally expect to refine and correct and continue and make mistakes with this and have to redo things or throw away things or add new things. So this is just a first cut. And so the next step in my mind is to think about the specific tools that I'll use and develop within the system. I'm a big fan of trying new things and seeing if they can add value. I'm also a big fan of keeping things very simple, right? There's sometimes a pen and paper and writing it down is really the best way to do it. And let's just do it that way instead of doing some cloud-based spreadsheet or some clever online thing. So I'm a big fan of effectiveness, simplicity and effectiveness. This is what typically teams enjoy. Very complicated platforms require a lot of work and a lot of process development to figure out how the team's going to use it. And so here's a look at the tools I'm considering for this iCore system. So let's start with the very first tool. So this is a tool called Innovation Within. It's a platform around the business model canvas and the hypotheses and a way to track interviews, and it's provided by the iCore program. So it's a cloud-based platform. It's got some chat function. It's got the canvas in there. It's got ways to throw out hypotheses and then link them to various parts of interviews. It looks pretty cool. I have to obviously learn it. I've gotten into it a little bit. I really want to pick it apart and put it back together. But this is, I think it's going to be a cool tool. It looks like it's very nicely developed, and I'm excited to use it. And at the end of the day, pretty much everything, all the results end up here, and I kind of like that. I'm a big fan of platforms like that, where at the end of the day, you might have used a bunch of other things, but when all the dust settles, you can look in one place, and that's where it is. I like that kind of platform. It's very frustrating to have things scattered all over the place, and when you're looking for all the results, especially when you're going back 6 months, a year, 2 years later, and you're going back to look at what you did, and now you got to remember, oh, that's right, we left that one thing in this one place, and that other thing was way over there. So I like having everything in one place. Let's see, yeah, and so my goal for this platform is, like I always do, I'm going to try to break it. And what that means is pretty much learn it and push it and see where maybe it's not clear as to how it works. Maybe the chat function's a little bit goofy. I'm not sure, I'm just making it up, but we will find out. Number 2, interview notes are going to be critical, right? And in this, so this is, we're going to go out, we're going to do 75 at least of these interviews. We're going to have a lot of notes. We're going to have a lot of details that come out of them. We're going to want to constantly go back and reference our notes and say, hey, we heard that from so-and-so 2 months, a month and a half ago or 3 weeks ago? Where's that interview? Let's pull that out. Let's find that note. Let's find that detail. And maybe now we got to follow up with that person again, or maybe that's going to lead us to someone else. So this is going to be critical as to where the notes are, how they're uploaded, how they're documented. Are we going to type them all in? Or are we just going to scan in our handwritten notes? Are we going to have audio sometimes? I really want to do this audio summary. So Peter is my partner, and so after Peter and I talk to someone and that person now goes away, whether it's a phone call or an in-person, I want Peter and myself in about 3 to 5 minutes just to kind of riff off the top of our heads of like the highlights of that last interview, because it's fresh in our mind. I think that's going to be a critical piece to leveraging these interviews, because even a couple hours later, it's amazing how much we forget and how much we think that we're going to remember, at least for me. I find that if I write it down, I put it somewhere, I'm going to remember it. If it's just purely in my head, that makes it really challenging for me. And so the critical thing with the interview notes is, it's probably going to be a lot of handwritten notes. Let's leverage audio. There is a transcription feature within Innovation Within. I want to use that. And then, of course, getting things into Google Docs and typing, high-level things in is going to be critical, because then we can search and find keywords and that kind of thing. And I'm really curious to see how nice the flow is. So we do an interview, we type it up, and now we enter it into Innovation Within. And, how do you tag it? How do you go through that process of picking apart the interview and trying to put it in different places on the business model canvas? I'm curious to see how well that works. But the interviews are like the foundation of the whole thing. So we really got to focus on doing a good job of documenting, and then binning, as I'm calling. So binning is just taking the interviews and putting them into these appropriate bins, so that way when we circle back and we analyze, it makes sense, where we find things and where we put things. And so we're always, so we're not always thinking, we're not making ourselves crazy by constantly putting things in different spots. And making it difficult to analyze the interviews, because that's one of the key things is analysis of these interviews. What are the details? What are the next steps? This is going to be critical. So Google Calendar, I'm a huge fan of Google products. Google Calendar, that's going to be the key thing. Everything is going to go on Calendar. So it's my job to keep my calendar up to date. I'm going to be pushing on my team members to do the same thing, because I'm just going to be dropping meetings. As the entrepreneurial lead, my main role is setting up these interviews, and so I'm just going to be dropping interviews left and right on Calendar. And I want to make sure that we're all available for these interviews, because it's critical to have at least 2 sets of eyes and ears in each interview, because we're going to hear different things. And then the other thing is with the calendar, and this is tough for me, because this pushes on my patience, is to be flexible, to be adaptable as meetings get canceled or meetings get shifted and moved around, or someone can't make something, or someone's late and now we're going to run up against another meeting. So just be flexible, be adaptable, be patient, be accommodating, have empathy. All these things are going to be important. And then the last piece about calendar is, we're going to probably be using a bunch of different web conferences. So is it Google Hangouts? Is it Zoom? We also have that at work. I find each one has its own strengths and weaknesses. I'm not really set on using any one. It's just the Hangout makes sense to me, because that's already in Google Calendar and it's right there and it's easy to set up. And I can do it on my phone. I can do it on a laptop. The thing that we never know is the person on the other end. What's their familiarity with these platforms, with these web conferencing? Sometimes I found that this can be a real sticking point if someone is not familiar with them and they get frustrated and they don't want to deal with this. And this is the last thing we need on the front end of an interview. So now we're walking into an interview and we've just frustrated our person here, and now we need to get information and we need to have a good discussion. So we got to be a little bit careful with web conferences, and what I think is going to work, and this is what I've used before, is I really get a sense to see if someone is a little resistant to the web conference. If not, then just drop it. Let's get on the phone. Not a big deal. But we'll see. We'll see how everyone's doing with that. So number 4, the contact list is also going to be critical. I'd love to have a CRM or a customer relationship manager. We don't have one right now. I'd have to buy one and then learn how to use it, or use one that I've used before and then train my team. I'm not so thrilled with that idea, because I don't want to get lost on the CRM where where it's all going to end up, and this is why, because it's all going to end up in innovation within anyway. So I don't want to have to develop a whole other platform, learn how to use it, train the team how to use it successfully, just to bring everything into a different platform and then kind of throw that one away. I don't want to be there. So I want to use something simple and streamlined. I'm thinking Smartsheet. Smartsheet is a cloud-based spreadsheet. It looks a lot like Excel, but it's got some collaborative features to it. Very simple to pick up and learn because everyone can use spreadsheets. It's cloud-based, so it's accessible anywhere, and it's got conditional formatting. And so you can, like with checkboxes and drop-downs, one can really make it have a very nice user, maybe not a nice interface, user interface, but like a very colorized and obvious interface. So that way, just from glancing at it, one can see where the work needs to be done. I'm a big fan of this. I made a Smartsheet for the business I ran in Sarasota around our business receiving a quote, a request for quote, coming up with a quote, reviewing the quote, sending it out, and then following up with the customer because the quote expired, and using the Smartsheet system for that workflow. I find it's fantastic for that. So I really see a nice Smartsheet for this interview, setup, execution, document workflow. But then at the end of the day, everything can end up in innovation within, but we'll still have the Smartsheet, which will still have this nice list of people with all their contact information. We can keep notes in there as well, some comments on some things we can drop. I think that we can link, and I haven't done this much, I think that we can link the Google Docs to the Smartsheet. So that way kind of you can imagine Google Docs being like kind of at the center and where the archive of the interviews in, and then we just point out to Smartsheet as we're doing our interviews, and then we bring things into cut and paste into innovation within. I really want to have a simple way for us to move across, between these platforms, and not make it clunky, but we'll see. And then also the great thing about Smartsheet is that you have these notifications and reminders that can really help, right? So you do something within Smartsheet, you put something up there, and then you put a notification, okay, call so-and-so in 3 days from now, and now I can forget about it. Now it's the notifications in the system. I'm going to get an email about this thing. I can always come back to the Smartsheet and see where the notifications are and kind of what work I've queued up for myself in the next week or the next couple days. And because this really helps me, because I don't want to rely on my memory. I find it's relatively good, but a lot of these details kind of fall through the cracks. And how can I make sure that as few details as possible are falling through the cracks, and I'm relying on my memory as little as possible? And so these reminders and these notifications through Smartsheet are really helpful because you can pin them to each row, and then that way I can just queue them up, and it's a great way to task manage. And so the last piece of the tools is just my favorite, Google Sites, the new Google Sites, not classic, but the new Google Sites. I love Google Sites. I love the fact that it's so simple. It's actually so simple. There are so few things that you can do with it, which makes it really easy to use. And of course, it works great with all the Google products. I'm a big fan of that. And I have this piece, and I had this talk on May 10th, so you should check it out. It's organization, right? So the Google site brings organization. It just brings a lot of things. You can put a lot of things in one place and point to a lot of things, and then kind of see it, the big picture very easily. So with organization comes clarity. With clarity comes the ability to sequence. With sequence, now we can get into action because we know that the next thing that we need to do, we know what it is, and so we can just put our head down and do it. And so check out that post. I've linked it in the outline. I'll also link it in the description. And then also with Google Sites, and we'll try this, right? So I had this this concept about how are we going to capture all these ideas that come in, right? We're going to have all these random ideas coming in as we're going through this process. Ideas from like our external team members, people that are on the technology team but not in the iCore course. We're going to have ideas come in, through these webinars, with our office hours, with random conversations with people, with in interviews. And these are going to be, the kind of idea that, okay, I know I want to capture this. It doesn't make sense to put it here in my notes. So where do I put it? So I'm going to see it later. And so I'm going to try using a Google form just called idea capture for this, and I'm going to put it in the Google site. And I'm also on my team members, I'm going to try to make a link on their home screen on their phone. I have one of these for this channel where I just have a shortcut on my phone to just a form, and all it is a one field form. It just says content. So whenever I have an idea for this YouTube channel for content, I just throw it I throw it out in the cloud. You have to make that noise for it to work, by the way. I don't know why. I guess I'm just iPhoned. And that way I can forget about it. So I'm in the middle of doing something, an idea comes in, pop it in, throw it up in the cloud. It ends up in some Google Sheet somewhere. I know I'm going to look back at it. Part of my process, you might notice, of my YouTube posting process, in the prepare outline, the first thing is find content, and then I have a link to my content list right there. And so I'm going to try the similar thing, this idea capture form. I'm going to put it on the Google site, but I'm also going to put a shortcut on my team members' phones, so that way whenever they have an idea about something, it can go into that form. We're going to see how that works. My experience with that kind of thing is that it's really hard to get over that knee-jerk kind of reaction just to send an email real quick, because we like doing that, and not that that's not good, but then that relies on me having really good email management skills, which can be challenging. Whereas if it's just through this form into this sheet, that's the only thing that ends up there are these ideas. And so I think that's better, but it might not be as effective, because people might just like doing email better, right? They might just default to that, but we'll see. We'll see how well it works. We'll see if the home screen shortcut can kind of break that knee-jerk reaction. But this is also where, if it doesn't work, then just throw it away, email me, then it's up to me to track these ideas. So I think that's everything for now. So now this is just, these are first cut tools. I'm just developing this now, so my task for the week is to really get into these tools. I want to learn innovation within. I want to get my Smartsheet set up. I mean, Google Calendar is kind of already there. And then also, I think critical is on the interview notes. It's more of a process, a specific process of how we go about archiving these and setting ourselves up to analyze this data. I think that's going to be critical for the interview notes. The Smartsheet's going to be pretty easy. I'm pretty good with that. That's just going to be fun, because that's just a fun thing to set up and use. And I just love the Google Sites. And you can embed a Smartsheet in the new Google Sites. That's something that they've been working on, and now I can do. And I can put the Smartsheet there as editable, as just view only. So I can do a lot with that. And I'm excited. So that's today's post. So I'm all about tools. I'm excited about this iCore program. I'm excited to systematize it. I'm excited to get into tools. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I love doing. That way, when we get in the program, we can just execute. And I love planning for execution. So that's going to be pretty awesome. So y'all have a great day. Thanks for listening. Subscribe if you like what you hear. This YouTube channel is all about the things I'm doing in my life for success. I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, so this is just the process I'm going through right now to get where I want to go. And this iCore program is going to be a lot of fun. So I've linked a lot of motivational videos down below. Check those out. Those really have got me on a good path this year. Also with the subscribing, please comment down below. I love to get into conversations. I want to hear about your stories, your journey. If I can help, I'd love to help. I'm really excited to help some folks. I think I have a lot to bring to the table. And then if you like the beats in the background, that's G Money, my alter ego. I've been drumming for a couple of decades. I write these drum songs. You can listen to them for free on SoundCloud. I've also linked a bunch of DJ sets. I'm really into this like psychedelic ambient genre, and then this new DJ Tasha Blank. I'm really into her. Really love her tribal beats. So check out some of her content. It's on SoundCloud. There's like hours and hours of music there from her. The Psy Ambient link down below. There's also, I'm not even sure, 100 hours of downloadable music there. So I would definitely recommend that if you like that kind of music. So anyway, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Y'all go out, have a great day, have a great week, and inspire someone. Talk soon.